Answer: what is better, living in the comfort of ignorance or the discomfort of information? If you couldn't answer, listen to the following story. Once upon a time, there was a man named Joel. Joel was struggling with severe psychological issues that were seriously affecting his life, so he went to a psychologist who diagnosed him with bipolar and depersonalization disorder. But instead of improving, his life only got worse from that point on. He wished he had never learned about his psychological conditions. He felt that despite all the problems they caused, he had been happier when he didn't know they existed. Now he felt everything had intensified. He was then advised to visit a Zen master named Dogen, who lived in a temple deep in the forest at the farthest outskirts of his city. At the temple, as soon as they sat down, Joel revealed his problem. "Master, after I received my diagnosis, everything in my life got worse. I wish I had never discovered my psychological issues. I was happier living in ignorance, even with all the difficulties. I've noticed that in our world, ignorant people seem happier than those who possess knowledge." The master looked at him and asked, "Do you really think ignorant people are happier, my dear?" "Yes," Joel replied, "because the more you understand how people, the world, and the universe work, the sadder and more depressed you become. How can anyone be happy knowing about all the injustices in the world?" The master chuckled and then said in a serene voice, "One of the greatest virtues of human beings is courage, and thinking deeply about the world around us requires courage because it can lead to unsettling questions about reality, the self, and our beliefs. Often we avoid critical thinking because it can be emotionally challenging or even frightening. Many people build barriers to protect themselves from uncomfortable ideas and live happily in ignorance. But I ask you, is it truly better to live that way?" "I think it is, Master," Joel replied. "Imagine living without knowing about economic and climate crises, diseases and pandemics, poverty, misery, and violence around the world. It's a dream." The master nodded as if he understood Joel's point and then said, "Indeed it is. But don't you think living in a dream is escaping reality? And escaping reality might eventually harm you? Think, for example, of a stressed man who decides to leave everything behind and live in the wilderness. Here, nothing and no one will bother me, he thinks. But then the first winter comes, and the food runs out, and he doesn't know how to find more. The first heavy rain arrives and collapses his roof, and he doesn't know how to rebuild it. Summer comes, and the forest around him catches fire, nearly costing him his life. He survives, but to make matters worse, a group of miners discovers gold in the land where his cabin stands and forces him out, leaving him with nowhere to go. And why doesn't he know how to handle these unexpected life events? Because he's living in ignorance about these issues. See how you can't run from problems and how they get worse the less you know? It's like people who don't check the weather forecast and are caught off guard by deadly storms, or those who don't read the news and end up stuck in massive traffic jams. Later, they think they're unlucky, that the world is against them. But the truth is, they didn't seek enough information to prepare themselves. The problems will eventually come into your life, and if you don't have knowledge about them, you won't know how to act in critical moments. Interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, Joel said. The master continued. Although it's not a guarantee of success, knowledge expands our repertoire of responses. It's like a puzzle piece for consciousness. You place one piece here and another there throughout life to eventually gain a broader perspective on solving significant problems. Furthermore, knowing something changes how we react to the world. For example, someone who has never seen a dog might only fight or flee when encountering one, but someone with knowledge can interact more calmly. The master then pointed at Joel and said, in therapeutic contexts, understanding a psychological condition like depersonalization can help patients comprehend and manage their symptoms better. It's a powerful tool for relieving suffering, but there is indeed a dilemma, the one you're experiencing. While knowledge can ease suffering in excess, it can also bring emotional burdens for vulnerable individuals and intensify their symptoms. Some people, upon deeply understanding certain subjects, may experience more unrest or even anguish. Disorders like depersonalization, for example, expose the fragility of self-perception and can cause discomfort by challenging our view of reality. Master Dogen then raised his arms and said, "Look around you, dear Joel. Can you see how everything seems connected and in harmony? If a bee drops some pollen it collected from a flower outside, it could be carried by a breeze to your nose, making you sneeze and wonder if you're catching a cold. You might start wearing masks when you come here without ever suspecting that you could simply be allergic to pollen. That's ignorance at play. And that's how our world works. We live in a single, integrated system where it's impossible to completely escape it. Any attempt to flee or resist becomes part of this larger system, absorbed by it. But even so, it's important to know the rules of the game and how it's being played, because that gives you more tools to respond appropriately and prepares you for any situation. At that moment, Joel regretted wishing to live in complete ignorance. After all, if he had been in complete ignorance, he would never have come to Master Dogen for such enlightenment, nor would he have known his problems, which is the first step towards solving them. On his way home, Joel reflected on the Master's words and concluded that he was part of a vast system where the best approach was not to try to escape and live in complete ignorance, but to pursue the necessary knowledge to solve the issues that bothered him. Knowledge shapes our perceptions and actions and helps us navigate a world governed by systems larger than ourselves. And you? Have you ever faced a situation where having knowledge helped you solve a big problem? Share your experience in the comments. See you in the next video.